I always get this message now. All of a sudden, every time the last 2 weeks, I'll get to my name. Don't worry about it. Every time, all of a sudden on Facebook, it's saying there's an error occurred when starting. So let me try this again. Just hit the go live. All the LinkedIn live folks, Sven, hold on for a second. We got to see if this will work. Now it says I'm live on Facebook. I don't know what happened. I don't know why now, as opposed to 5 seconds ago. But anyway, I'm Brent Leary.
I don't even know what to say after that one. Paul Greenberg, except for the error on Facebook.
And he's Sven.
Italian.
Not Italian this time
Yeah,
around?
I think so. Bentornati amici di conversazione colta. I have no
What does
Italian
Leonardo da
accent.
Vinci have to do with the CRM Playaz? I don't know,
That's
but we
right.
are the
Don
CRM
Amici.
Playaz.
Don Amici.
Don Amici. You remember him in Trading Places?
Yes, of course I do.
Him and Ralph Bellamy?
Yep, they were awesome.
They were what would the
And
Duke
hi,
brothers?
Sven.
The
Duke brothers. That's right.
Yes. Hey, Sven. I even knew that was Italian, so we're off to a good start.
Of course,
All right.
he might convince us it's like Sicilian.
Well, if he gets to that level,
yeah,
he's
dialect.
He's got it. Anyway, it is Thursday afternoon. It is really sunny, and it's not even 90 degrees here today.
Really?
It's only 88. It's like wintertime here all of a sudden.
I think we're higher than you for a change. We're at like 92.
Really?
I think we're 92, but let me check. I'll check while you.
Yeah, you check.
Let's see.
Yeah,
we are. We're 91.
Wow, it's like
yeah,
bizarro,
we're gonna go up to 93.
Upside down weather.
Bizarro, that's right. And that means we have to talk am. Whoa, not bad, Dean. He has an Italian pun in there.
Who's Bellamy?
Bellamy would mean good friend in Italian. So Ralph Bellamy or Bellamy. Go, Dean.
Yeah, go somewhere. Don't know where.
Hey, Larry. Larry's here too.
Oh, Larry. Good to see you, Larry.
Hey, by the way, Larry, we're going to talk to you offline.
Yes.
Pretty much immediately. Be ready.
Because we definitely want to have you on
soon.
Upcoming show. A show, whatever, for show.
We're going to have a show in Soho.
That's a lot of... Anyway, moving on. So, it's going to be a really fun show. I think it's going to be a really fun show because we do have a guest. And I have to say...
Oh, that sounds like fun. We have a guest?
We have a guest. Well, it's always better when we have a guest as opposed to just you and me just yammering on, I guess.
I know. I agree.
Well, we'll definitely be following up with you, Larry.
Very quickly.
Absolutely. All right. So I don't want to get into it too much. I want to wait until we actually, and I have to do the intro this time.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard to do an intro to a person after listening to you do all these. I mean, is profuse a good word to use in terms of verbose?
That's probably a better word.
So I'll have to pull out the thesaurus over the next several minutes so I can do this intro, right? But in the meantime, hey, we had a really interesting happy hour yesterday. Now, we can't talk about everything that went in there, but some of the things that companies are doing, we're all kind of feeling like they're on the midst of a recession. Unfortunately, there are, layoffs taking place, but the way that some of these companies are handling that aspect of their business is really bad.
Yeah, Brent, you are now.
Uh-oh. I think we lost you. Are you still there? Oh, can you hear us? Wow. He was going to say something about me too. And I don't know what he was going to say. It didn't sound like it was leading into something positive, but and I didn't, kick the Wi-Fi connection off, so he didn't say that. What happened to Paul? Paul, come back, please. I'll never say it again. Whatever it is I was saying, I don't know what I was saying, but he just looks, he just suspended motion there in mid sentence, and I really feel bad. And now he's just gone completely. He just left me all to myself. I do have my guest in the green room at the ready if I have to, pull the ripcord early, and then it becomes a whole completely different show. What the heck? Larry, he was saying so. Well, that would really be a shame if he got cut off right before saying something amazing about me. But wow, he is gone. I'm looking. I'm hoping he comes back. But if he doesn't come back in the next minute or so, or maybe 30 seconds, the show's got to go on. Maybe there's a thunderstorm. No. One thing we know, Alan, Paul Greenberg definitely has not used up all his words. Never. That's like that old commercial where the dude was all stressed out and he says, I think I got to the end of the internet. No, Paul will never get to the end of the words. But maybe we're having some technical difficulties. We hope that he comes back. But in the meantime, I guess that's why it's good to have guests just sort of at the ready. All right, so I'm going to introduce our guest. I'll keep an eye out for Paul. If he comes back, of course, we'll bring him in. We'll let him say whatever amazing thing he was going to say about me. Well, if it is amazing, if it doesn't sound like it, I'll have to drop him again, but we'll cross that bridge later. Anyway, we do have a guest. And to put everything in context here, I have an opportunity to basically speak with our guests at least once a week, at least for a show. We do a lot of texting and all that kind of stuff in between. What are you saying here, Sven? Wow. Yeah, this is good. Get my tap dancing shoes out here. Still on the lookout for Paul. Anyway, so every week I get a chance to talk to Paul Greenberg because now he's back again.
That was bizarre.
What happened?
All of a sudden, you froze. Then the whole thing froze. Then everything went into infinite loops. And then I couldn't get out of the browser at all, no matter, even with Control Alt Delete. And then I literally couldn't move anything. And it wasn't. And so I had to shut the system off hard and reboot. That was it.
Have you been watching Doctor Strange again?
Yeah, you know what? I think that's what happened. Actually, now I'm.
You got sent into another multiverse or something because you were gone there for a while.
Well, actually, this one was from the Flash. I was sent with negative. What do they call it? Negative speed. This was negative speed.
Negative speed.
Yeah, you have to watch Flash to understand what the hell I just said. So,
by the way, this is what Alan Berkson thought happened.
Alan, you know better than that. That is one of the immutable laws of the universe that will never happen.
Now, this is what Larry Augustine was saying. So if you would like to pick up from where you left off, feel free.
72 years old, man, forgot already.
So that amazing thing that you were about to say about me,
yeah,
will never be heard by you.
Erased. I highly suggest if I'll drink some bourbon and see if it comes
back. Oh, do you want to mention anything about bourbon and drinking in an event that's coming up in about a month or so?
Huh. I have to think about what that might be. There's so many different ones like that coming up. So yes. So I think it's July 25th.
25th?
Yeah, 25th, 26th. Zoho is doing a
Zoho Day.
It's a Zoho Day, and there's going to be a lot of analysts and customers and others at this event. And I, as part of Zoho Evening, will be conducting a bourbon tasting. Right, and
Nice.
I've worked out the details with my our extremely dear friend Sandy Lowe, and I'm going to be choosing the bourbons now. If anyone has a suggestion for premium bourbons, super premium bourbons that I might want to consider in this, let's say this, I have a very decent budget for this thing. So, but I'm going to try to keep it down. Just don't be crazy. But if you have some suggestions for bourbons throughout the show, put it in the comments,
Ooh,
and I will definitely take them into consideration.
nice.
As
Yeah, and we'll put them on screen.
Yes.
And we'll get a real-time reaction from Paul to see if it's any good or not.
And if we actually choose it, we will take some shots of it, and it will be attributed to you as the chooser at the
Nice.
bourbon tasting and at later when we do later discussions of what happened.
Wow. There's a lot
There we
going
go.
on in this bourbon tasting.
That's right. You can have your own signature bourbon choice.
Oh, look who it is.
No, Sandy, that's not happening.
You know,
No hats, no buckles, no.
wait a minute. I want kilts. I still want kilts. Don't we
You
need
don't get
something?
killed, not for bourbon. That shows how little you do drink.
I
Right?
really don't know.
That's Scotch.
Scotch bourbon. Some
That's
form of skirt should be worn during this event.
Bourbon, as much as I have no interest in being on theme, which is country theme, that's a lot closer to what bourbon is than kilts.
How about spurs and skirts and 10-gallon
Not
hats?
happening.
There it is.
You know what? Even pants and spurs are not happening. Spurs are not happening.
I'm not on theme. I am never on theme unless the theme is the reigning Super Bowl champs.
Or Prince.
Oh, yeah, that's true too.
That's the other theme. If you do a
Definitely.
Prince, I'll even be on theme if it's Prince.
What? Really? Sandy,
Yes.
did you hear that? We have to make this happen. We have
I'll
to
even
make
put-
this happen.
I'll take what little hair I have left and kind of beef it up. I'll do everything. I'll buy his
Thomas,
guitar.
we've done the 10-gallon
We already did
hats.
this.
Remember that? It was
Yes.
me, you, and Vijay. Got a picture, all of us
We
wearing
all-
hats. And you know what? I remember your hat was too small for your head. My
Yes.
hat was way too big for my head. We looked like clowns.
Well,
Now,
and
Vijay
we
looked
still-
good. Vijay
Yeah.
really
Now, and we only did it for Sandy, if you remember.
we only do this stuff for her.
Okay, that's Larry's. That's one of his bourbon
Blanton's
choices.
Gold.
Blanton's Gold.
Is that a good one?
Yeah, it's a very good one actually, and I'm definitely going to put that in the list. It's actually a really good option, a good choice.
So when you do the tasting of Blanton's Gold,
Well,
you'll do the shout out. This
right
one
now
came.
it's on the list.
Okay. So,
It's not
so you-
confirmed.
are we
You
going to
can
have
file
to
it.
have a selection show so that once you get all your requests and then you do a show that gives the actual ones that made the list?
We can definitely do that.
We'll have to do that at least a week before the event. Right?
Not that long from now, so we have
That
to do it.
is.
That would be the week of the. That would be the 21st, actually. That would
Okay.
be that show.
So get all your bourbon requests in by the week of the 21st. It looks like Dean is giving the approval for that one.
Okay. Now that was Blanton Gold specifically, though.
Sven, we did look like clowns.
Oh,
Not
we looked ridiculous. We still have that picture, don't we?
I think I
That
burned
fake
it.
picture.
I don't know.
No, that
It
fake
looked too bad.
picture. Remember that
fake-
one we did? that was
Oh
fake?
yeah, that's right.
We have.
Yeah,
that.
but those hats fit.
yeah,
The
well,
real,
given that
did
they were
not fit.
digital, yeah,
it was
they were
bad.
digital.
Anyway, okay. So get all your bourbon requests into the Venerable Paul Greenberg by the 21st. Is that
And I will taste test every one of them in
Wow.
in one evening. One evening.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'll do it in one evening, and you will not see me for about a week.
Can you live stream that? We would love to see that.
That will be on Engage with Paul and Kenny, a PPN production.
Engaged, enraged, enraptured. whatever.
That's right. And get enraged. Enraged. That'll be a different show we do. Enraged with.
So watch this segue that I'm about to do.
Okay.
This shows you just how experienced I am with this. So we just got done talking about the bourbon. Is it going to be bourbon night or Zoho night after Zoho day? Right. So,
wow, that was just
our guest
is just genius.
Hey, I got an advanced degree, buddy.
You got a flair for this. Whoa.
Our guest today, and I have to do the intro. So sorry, guest, because you're really missing out on the person who does the best intros in the business. But since you know me more than you know him, you're stuck with me. Anyway, so our guest for today, I almost hate to say this because then he knows I really have a lot of respect for him, which I try to not show on a weekly basis. But our next guest is truly one of the smartest people I know. He is a really great product manager. If you want to talk no code, low code, development tools, platforms, he's the guy that you go to. He's the guy I go to. But in the last year, I've had an opportunity to, he's the host. I'm like a co-host, and Raju Vigesna is a co-host of a weekly show we've been doing literally a year now called Watching Privacy, where every week we look at kind of the latest news, the current events, the things that we're seeing, the things that we like, mostly the things that we don't like about what's going on with privacy and data and how companies are using it, are selling it, all these things that are going on. For the past year, we've done a weekly show called Watching Privacy. He's the host. He's a really good host. He makes it fun. He makes it incredibly informative. And I've said so many good things about him right now. I'm starting to feel something in my throat, so I better stop and just bring him on. One thing I will say, he's the second biggest Rams fan there is. Tejas Gadhia.
What?
No one's a Rams fan.
I'm taken aback by the fact you're a Rams fan.
No, absolutely not. I had half a mind to drive home and put my Cowboys shirt on and come back, but I thought I'd keep it kind of neutral for the show.
You're borderline off the show. Cut it.
No. In all honesty, good to see you. Usually, right before we do this, we're recording an episode of Watching Privacy. But what we decided to do is, since he's our guest this week, we thought we'd do like maybe a little bit of a mashup. We kind of bring Watching Privacy to CRM Playaz for a bit. Maybe we'll even get a chance to play, I don't know, Stump the Godfather or something. You know,
not on privacy, you're not. That's an automatic. I'll just concede. What's the word they use in law when you just concede the point?
I plead the fifth. No,
no. This is the term when in a trial that you just concede the point.
Noted.
We stipulate.
I don't know.
Stipulate it. I'm stipulating. I'm stumped. Right.
Oh, by the way, Dean is proposing Four Roses Super Premium.
Super Premium.
Is that a good one?
I didn't know there was one called Super Premium. Okay, Dean, I'm going to follow up with you on a little more detail on that one. I didn't know that one existed. So I'll be back with you on that.
I do have a suggestion. I think Paul doing the tasting of the bourbon should be the inaugural show on the CRM Playaz Plus subscription channel, and that'll be the opening thing, and that'll be how you can really gain a lot of traction.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. By the way,
good idea.
How do you like my July 4th edition Rams hat?
I mean, yeah, it's on theme. I like it. It'd be better if it didn't say Rams on it, but still a nice looking hat.
All right.
Well, you Cowboys.
So why don't we start like this? I know it feels weird because
he literally just took a swig of blended scotch. By the way, that was not water.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Already can't take it.
All right, we've been talking about, we've been looking every week for the past year about things that are going on with respect to data privacy, how data is being abused, how customer data is being abused, who's abusing companies that we never heard of before we started doing this. We talk about almost every week. So over the last year, what has been like the thing that has stuck out to you the most with respect to where we are right now in terms of customer data privacy or data privacy, ethical use of data or lack thereof?
I mean, generally, I would say it's still in an awareness stage. So, I mean, over the past year, it's been kind of decent where, some things or stories are popping up and they kind of attract a lot of attention. But I really think this week's news and the Supreme Court ruling and all that has really escalated just application privacy to the forefront. So, a lot of people I know that were not even interested in privacy or didn't even think about it. On the show, we always talk about how people think, employee or personal privacy is all about basically like getting ads targeted to you. But now they're realizing that when companies control a bunch of your data, it can be used in our favorite watching privacy show word, nefarious ways. And so it can go very badly very quickly with this data collection that, a lot of times companies don't even know what they're going to use for it. And so there was a number of articles over the past couple of days that talk about different apps that, there was a big push about like period tracking apps and a lot of location tracking apps and what kind of information gets turned over, and a lot of people not really giving straight answers on what they would or wouldn't do with government requests and things like that. So overall, I think still an awareness stage, but I think we're making progress. I guess as weird as that sounds, but we are making progress.
So one thing that's kind of, I mean, I watching privacy pretty often, but I can't say I know, I'm not an expert in privacy. That said, what I want to sort of throw out is one thing that's always bothered me, I guess, over time, because I'm one of these people who really doesn't really care about my data being exposed, because as I work with, I remember Ed Thompson's speech many years ago at a conference where he basically said, if you don't want it known on the internet, don't write it. That was the way he put it. And I still kind of agree with him to that extent. Now, that said, obviously, I recognize the concern greatly. But on the other hand, you have a lot of companies who are attempting to, let's call it, suss out and utilize and expose and utilize data that they're getting that is personal to other people. And I would say, judging from at least the various protocols in place, while there's, ostensible compliance built into what they're doing, like, yes, we are GDPR compliant, but that's pretty much the extent of GDPR compliance they say they are. Like, for example, with the watch list, one thing that was interesting in the privacy questions I had, and among them was, are you compliant with all the contemporary and blah, blah, blah. And there was only one company that mentioned a person who is I'm using the term loosely because it obviously doesn't have to have this title, a chief data compliance officer, which is a requirement of GDPR, right? Having somebody who is handling it. And only one company even mentioned having one, right? Which struck me really, really interestingly. And so I'm wondering really what you think from the standpoint of, on the one hand, you have all these companies claiming compliance. On the other hand, I think it's pretty much, I'll say a lot of it seems to be peripheral, even though I'm sure there are basics that are in place. And then you have the other part of it where people are offering their data to get something in return, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you reconcile all of that? Because that's a lot of different avenues being kind of floating, showing up and floating around without actually coming together. How do you deal with it?
So I mean, like on the GDPR angle, I think it was a good move in order to just kind of bring awareness. But again, I'm not sure compliance is 100% really there. Bigger companies are going to be following it. Mid-size, smaller, it's kind of unless you really get into trouble. Because even if we just look at any kind of regulation, right? Like for GDPR to like have some teeth, someone has to make a complaint or like try to request their information to be deleted or something like that. Be so upset that they go and report them to the government. Then you got to wait for the government to go do their analysis and request information from the company, and then it may or may not actually end up in something. And I think a lot of them are kind of just ending up in like, wrist slaps. And so it doesn't really have the teeth needed to kind of create the enforcement mechanism that it should have, but at least it's enough of a fear tactic that some people even consider it as a requirement. And a lot of it is also around, I would say, security and not just privacy. So even like GDPR is about privacy, but a lot of the regulations are about, notifying customers about data breaches and things along those lines that are more kind of security related than, information is being leaked. So that's a bad thing about privacy, but also a bad security practice as well. So they are kind of intertwined a bit. But even to go to what you were saying in the beginning, Paul, about kind of the information being out there already, I think we all kind of, people are in kind of different camps. We have maybe some folks who want to be off the grid and never discovered. And then there's like, I think the vast majority who are kind of in this middle ground where they understand there's a data trade-off, but they don't know what the trade-off happening really is. And then there's the last bucket of whatever, I don't care, free for all. And in that middle bucket of they're okay with the trade-off, the biggest problem is that there isn't really any kind of transparency or even just clear communication from companies about what is being captured and how it's being used. And so it's always buried under some terms and conditions or legalese where it says, some identifiers may be collected and used when traded and used to improve services. And you don't know what anything really means because it's all just very broad legalese terms. And that, I think, is where companies lose a little bit of trust. And that's why people, don't really know how strongly to feel about it. So, like, for example, there was a story we did on Watching Privacy a while ago about how there was some like Muslim prayer app or something along those lines that was basically tracking people's use data and location and stuff like that, and then sharing that information out. And so that's like you probably clicked OK by downloading the app, you agreed to their terms. But at the end of the day, you kind of question, why was it being tracked? And then why was it being sold? And was that ever explicitly told to the end user? And anytime you don't explicitly say something to the end user, that kind of just means you have something to hide. Ultimately, just that kind of transparency and clear communication will help earn a lot of people's trust. And so it hasn't quite yet become that, but eventually it will become a little bit more of a deciding factor, I think, or even a factor of sales for, which companies do I want to choose to work with? The ones that are honest with me and straightforward, whatever their intentions are, or the companies that kind of try to hide things and I'm not really sure what I'm getting into. So I think it's just communication, and I don't think that's a hard thing to ask for any company to really do, is just be clear about what it is you're doing.
Okay, but there is sort of a caveat in there, which is that, okay, let's just presume company A is fully transparent. How do they, and to your point, a lot of times things are just buried in terms and conditions, knowing that people won't read them. Well, people won't read things they find boring. That's pretty much it. They don't want to read conditions because that's buried in quantity. But how do you get their attention on whether you can be transparent and say, hey, by the way, we're using your data this way, and this way. But who's going to find that stuff? How are they going to look for it? You're going to throw it in their face? What are you going to do that actually provides clear communication rather than, look, we want to be honest, and we have it, and it's here if you want to look at it. But that's actually the same thing to some extent, because people will tend to not look at it unless it literally hits them in the face and they don't have a choice. Hi, you're not going to get off this screen until you see this. And then they're going to get annoyed that you kept them on the screen. So the question is more, how do you actually communicate that clear, use?
Yeah, I think, there's definitely a fine line because, like you said, you don't need to throw it in everybody's face because not everybody is interested in the topic as a whole. However, like even a dedicated privacy page that has, clear communication for anybody that does look it up can easily find it. Oftentimes, like when I'm going through a website and want to like unsubscribe or delete my information, you can kind of just tell how good a company is or how much they value that aspect of privacy when you go to their help documents and you have to dig into like 7 different links in order to find an unsubscribe link or to find a way to request your information and have it deleted. And so making that kind of information, I would say, just more clear, easy to find for those that are looking for it will gain a lot of trust for that middle group that might be curious, but isn't going to be a deal breaker. The vast majority who just don't care and, go along with the flow, for those, I think they don't care because they kind of just don't know what all is happening in the background. And if they had a better idea, they might start caring a little bit more, which is kind of where the awareness comes from. But for now, if someone looks for it, they should just be able to find the answer clearly. And so, yeah, I don't think like a splash page right off the top and say, oh my God, we're protecting your privacy, and like holding someone back from doing what work they need to do. But if someone was to, click a link and say learn more, or just search, company name privacy, go to a dedicated page. Don't go to a terms and condition. List things out in like clear bullets and say, look, we collect X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z is used for, these reasons. And, if you want to opt out, here's an easy link. But the way dark patterns and all sorts of like pages are designed, it's like the smartest engineers in the world are working on how to like basically prevent you from doing what you technically should be able to do, and which is just like the right business sense. I was one of the earlier things I think Raju told me a while back was just like, you can tell a lot about a company by how easy they make it to cancel your product. And that's like even outside of privacy, right? If you try to cancel New York Times, you can't even go online unless you're in California. You have to like email or call or do some nonsense like that. And it's just like, well, if you're in this kind of shady business practice in one way, you don't really respect your customers. You're probably I'm going to assume the worst for you and think you're doing things incorrectly or immorally in a lot of other ways. So it's just kind of all related, and it's kind of just the company ethos of, do you really respect and trust your customers?
All right. One of the things we do every week. No, we're good, man. We're good. No zinger. One of the things we do every week, we just look for stories, things that just catch our eye about something related to how companies are using data, how companies are collecting data. And one of the things you just said, they should outline, what they're collecting and why they're collecting it. But we know after doing this show for a year, these folks don't want to be specific about how they're going to use the data, because they don't know exactly how they're going to use the data. They just want to be able to collect it and then eventually try to figure out the best way that they can monetize it. Every week, there's a story, around that kind of thing, or the data is being collected under the guise of this, and it then ends up being used or sold or shared for that. A lot of people right now, currently, a lot of women in particular, are really concerned about the apps that they're using to track their periods and things like that, and how that could potentially be used against them with the Roe v. Wade decision that just came out. So there's a lot of interest, a lot of focus on that. But you shared something recently on our little back channel that's kind of a similar kind of theme. Cryptocurrency titan Coinbase providing geo-tracking data to ICE. Now, the folks who signed up for Coinbase, I'm pretty sure, did not expect Coinbase to be sharing geo-tracking data with ICE. But maybe you could talk a little bit about this and why this kind of story is important to understanding where we are today with how customer data is being used in ways that were never dreamed of, never imagined, and usually can be going against them actually.
Yeah, so this one was kind of interesting. I think it was either an Intercept article or a CoinDesk article, one of the two. But basically, I think the title is a little misleading, which is I don't want to like defend these guys or not, but basically they have this. From what I saw, like Coinbase sells or licenses this thing called Coinbase Tracer, and Tracer is like a service that they sell to other companies, and it helps them kind of, I want to say, I don't know exactly, but some way to easily visualize and analyze transactions on various blockchains. And so if you want to see where, funds or crypto is going from one wallet to another and kind of track it all, yeah, you can kind of look it up, but it's very complicated for like a normal person to do it. So this Tracer service that they sell basically visualizes it, makes it easy to be able to identify this information. And so basically what they had done is they had partnered with ICE, which obviously does, I guess, immigrations and customs enforcement or whatever, and allowed them to track, any kind of crypto payments easily. And I think there was a decent amount they paid. It says in August, I think Coinbase sold analytics license for $30,000, followed by a software purchase worth $1.6 million the next month. So a couple $1 million here and there. and it doesn't really dictate exactly what it does. But yeah, I mean, I'd say the service they're offering, it was supposed to be anonymized, but anytime you see a story like this, even if it's a hyperbole article or not, it just shows that there is ways that information is being used in the back channel that you didn't sign up for. Because technically, I signed up for Coinbase to buy whatever, crypto or I was going to say another word, but I don't think I'm supposed to cuss on here. BS coin. Let's call it BS coins. Oh, I can shit coins, right? So I mean, like, there's a lot of things like that that it'll let you sell, and so it's you just don't like. It's such a different business model than what they advertise themselves at, and you don't even know. And that's where the problem again happens with data being like this. And in the article, they stress about how it's anonymized and it's not really tied to anything. But we've seen so many articles that prove anonymized data, it doesn't really mean anything. And especially when you're giving it to the government, you know that they have everything. I think the bigger thing that confused me out of the article is why the government would pay these people. I mean, I feel like you're probably tracking everything already. I'm surprised they don't have some kind of centralized way to track every kind of crypto payment already. The conspiracy theory side of me thinks that they just kind of shell out $1 million here and there to make it seem like they don't have the technology, and it's like a cheap way to run cover.
We talked about this, man. It's because it's sometimes it's just easier to get it from an outside company than it is to try to figure out how to get it internally. So they'll go to the outside guys because it's just easier to get it from them than to wade through all the red tape, the bureaucracy that a lot of these big organizations, these big agencies have.
I mean, the ICE guy just needs to call the FBI guy and be like, "Hey, can I borrow your login and email real quick?" That's
right.
Save the taxpayers $1 million.
I've got to stump the Godfather. Many questions.
I've already stipulated, so
I know it's just a simple yes or no question.
It doesn't matter. I've stipulated.
It never does.
I stipulated.
Okay. Anyway,
I have a feeling Paul is big into crypto.
Oh yeah, I hate crypto. I am so old school on that matter.
We're going to move past that one.
Yeah, no. So, now I'm not stipulating on crypto.
No. Have you ever heard of a company called Clearview?
Who are you asking this?
You.
I'm stipulating. No, I'm on this one. On this one, I'm invoking the Fifth Amendment.
Oh, God. What are we? January 6th or something?
Yeah.
So have you heard?
I've had a conversation with Cassidy, and we're both invoking the Fifth Amendment.
All right. Moving on. So I wanted to get a yes or no, just so that I could ask Tejas to talk a little bit about.
Yes. I don't know what
I'm still going to ask Tejas to talk a little bit about this company that I don't think either of us had ever heard of before we started watching Privacy, that has almost every week showing up in a way that we can't not talk about them at this point because of what they do and what they're selling.
Yeah, so I mean, Clearview AI is a company that basically got really popular, I guess, and not something they want to do because it's one of those companies that want to stay under the radar, but they basically scan any piece of information they possibly can to try to create like a facial recognition database. They've got billions of images of people all around the world. They can do facial identification. Most of their customers are in government or law enforcement, so they partner a lot there. They kind of got kicked out of Europe, I'm pretty sure, because they were violating European laws. They're not allowed to operate in, I think, Illinois, because they have pretty strict facial recognition laws in place. But nationally, at the end of the day, they still partner with the government, so they're not going to get banned anytime soon. But I guess they really kind of blew up because what they were doing is they were web scraping Facebook data to get everyone's pictures and profile information. And so that's, I mean, it's against Facebook's terms to like scrape their data. And then also information you put on Facebook technically is, like what Paul said in the very beginning, is posted online, and you assume that maybe everybody has access to it. And that's kind of the route that Clearview took in I'm sure, their court proceedings. And basically we're capturing every single image, running them in their database, storing it, sorting it, organizing it, and then selling it back or licensing it to the government in order to access for whatever facial recognition purposes. And a lot of companies are partnering with them. Overall, a lot in government. I think there's a TSA one where they have a partnership in order to expedite lines, and instead of giving your ID at the front, you can just scan your picture. A lot of new airports are kind of going into this facial recognition space, and so definitely the leader in global facial recognition overall, but kind of, I would say, more or less shady dealings with maybe not so much shady, but kind of just one of those companies in the background that you don't really hear about because it's not consumer facing. But if you are paying attention to them, you'll see their name pop up in articles about, almost on a monthly or weekly basis, there's a fine or there's a court proceeding happening or a new lawsuit or a new place they got banned from. So they're getting restricted. But again, when your biggest customer is the government, it's kind of tough to really get rid of them, at least here in the States. And so they'll still operate a lot.
I'll tell you, they're scary at some level. I mean, even the way they quietly market is scary. I mean, I went onto their site just now to look at them, and one of the first things I see is 20
Your
billion
face?
plus images in our law. Yeah.
That would have
No,
been great. Hi, Paul.
Well, I'm the CEO. I'm right. Right. So of course you see my face there. Well, one of the Paul Greenbergs is, again, the League of Paul Greenberg gentlemen. So it said 20 billion plus images in our law enforcement database. Now that's a private company talking about a law enforcement database. That is just the concept alone is frightening, because you're basically taking effectively what that triggers in any human being's brain is a private force, right? So they're frightening on the surface of what they do, right? I mean, if they just said in our image database, they probably would have gotten away with it. But they literally made a point of saying law enforcement database. Just simple things like that make you worry about them right away.
Yeah, we've been worrying about them ever since we found out about them.
Oh,
But,
thanks
I
for
mean,
now making me stay up even later at night.
but think about a company like Axiom. What was it early on? I think we came across them, and I think they have 3,000 different data points on over, what is it, 12 million people? Or probably more than that. I don't know. But they have 3,000 data points on over millions of individuals. And it's open to the, whoever wants to pay for it.
Yeah, brokers. I mean, brokers like this, like either Axiom and Clearview, they're all in a collection space, and a lot of people, like brokers specifically, they all operate behind the shadows, and so nobody really knows about them. But they are the aggregators of a lot of this information, and where a lot of companies go to access it. So, a lot of times, I guess people kind of think that you go to a website or open an application on your phone or something like that, and then that company captures data and then just sells it. Sometimes that's the case, and the people that they sell it to are often these data brokers, and they buy it from a lot of different companies. And a lot of times they'll masquerade it in terms of, oh, we'll offer some kind of analytics software, but really in exchange for the analytics software, cough Google, we'll track every single person that comes on this website, and in exchange for this free analytics tool, you're gonna give up all of your customers' information. As a company, what do I care? That's like a free, valuable service of analytics for customer data that I could care less about, and nobody's gonna, really fret about me giving it away or sharing it. And oftentimes, I think one of the trickiest things in like the terms and conditions that websites will have is, instead of saying, we'll never sell your data, that's a very some 50 lawyers probably looked at that sentence and was like, great, we won't sell your data, but we sure will share it, we'll exchange it, we'll trade it for something. We could trade it for crypto, and that might not be considered a sale. We might trade it for, some other service in exchange for something. And so you really got to be careful about the way they word it. But these data brokers, they'll gobble up any piece of data they can. And they're one of the biggest companies or reasons how data can get de-anonymized too, because when you get information from 6 different sources, all you have to do is overlap that data and say, oh, look, addresses are pretty similar, or IP addresses are pretty similar, and now you know exactly who it is. So you get one anonymized source, and then you combine that with 50 other anonymized sources, you can put it together, and it's no longer anonymous anymore. And that's how they basically target you for right now, advertisements, but there's no telling where else it could really go, especially like we talked about before with the Supreme Court ruling, if a state government or whatever wants to go and get data, they're not going to go to some regular app. They'll go to the data broker and say, give me the data that you have. And the broker will have to comply to a government order, or at least fight it and see where that ends up. So brokers are the real kind of devil in the darkness there, that a lot of people don't talk about, but are pretty bad.
So let me throw something out to you guys. I'm going to ask you, this will be stump the children, since you guys are way younger than me. Right. Do you trust Norton?
No.
Ed Norton?
Brent?
Norton.
Yeah, right.
No.
Norton. You trust Norton?
After this past year, I don't think I trust anybody.
All right. The reason I'm saying that is Norton has a service that they charge an extra, I think it's $100 or something. Yeah. And their commitment is within, I forget, 6 weeks or something, to get you off all the data brokers that they find. So I decided, all right, let's see what comes of that. But I'll tell you where the caveat comes in. So they found my name, well, my data in 21 different brokers, which is a fair amount.
Your name?
Well, no, my data. Okay. My actual data. Well, to be honest, sometimes when you do those, guaranteed this search is way deeper, blah, blah, blah. What comes up is they're free. As you look at Paul Greenberg, right? And addresses I've never lived at. I mean, it's like ridiculous and wrong. But in this case, 21 brokers. Now, they said at one point in this, some of these brokers require proof that it's you who's making the request. And you know what Norton wants you to do? Upload your driver's license.
Yep.
And I said, well, no, I'm not going to do that, right? But a lot of that, that's why I asked if you trusted Norton. If you trusted Norton, you might do that, right? I don't trust Norton either. And in fact, his service is a joke, really. I talked to the Norton guy, and I said, how many of them would work without the license? He said, about 15. I said, all right. They've never gotten me off one, right? So not one. And they still hit me up for like more money. I said, there's no way. I said, not only that, I'm going to diss you here occasionally, which I am now doing, because it's a horrible service. But it goes to a lot of interesting points. They're offering a service to exactly your point, Tejas, right? Exactly that point of the data brokers are the real devil here. And yet they're being basically demons to the devil, right? In the way they're doing it, right? So there's a whole, I'm literary. I'm very literary guy.
Very
why I'm a good writer, right? So, that's fascinating to me, because they're operating by cannibalizing you in order to fulfill a promise they can't keep, using what's already the devil as the scary creature when they're not being much better than that. And so you're not really, the interesting question then becomes, how do you get yourself actually out of those? I don't know. I honestly have no answer. I just don't know.
Yeah, it's really hard. But on the Norton thing, this is probably not going to make you very happy, but I think earlier this year in like January or so, there was a story about how when you install Norton 360 on your computer, it actually installs a crypto miner on your computer. So you've actually been doing the crypto community quite the favor if you had that app installed.
I'm rich now. I'm completely rich. I figured that out.
Wow.
I just diverted the mining to my accounts.
Well, also, right. Norton was skimming a commission off of all the mining too. But beyond the point, even on the broker part, it is extremely, extremely difficult. Even on the watching privacy side of things, we've been trying to do a little bit more research into identifying the top 15, 20 different brokers and the opt-out methods. There's a couple websites you can follow. A lot of them do want you to verify the information, which makes it very tough. And honestly, like I've done it to a couple of websites and have gotten taken down, got my information taken down. But it's like this weird trust thing, like you said, with the devil, because like this company that I'm trying to get my information taken down from has all my information I never gave them. And then they want me to verify my information in order to get it down. And I don't really know if it ever got taken down technically or deleted or whatever. So any verification that I do could just de-anonymize my own data and then open up the can of worms for for more targeting. So it's like, why would I voluntarily give you more information in order to not? So I mean, yeah, I think, I mean, those are just the worst of the worst companies, and how do you deal with them? I have no real idea, and so I don't have a good answer for you on that one. But yeah, brokers are definitely the worst. One app that I don't want to like endorse them or anything, but I think it was called Getmine, GETMINE.com, if I'm not mistaken, or Mine Data Removal, something like that. I'll find out what the name is and throw it in the chat. But there's a couple different privacy-oriented services that will do that kind of a scan allegedly for free. One of them wanted me to connect to my Gmail email, and then it would scan all of the emails in my inbox. And based on all the domains of the emails I had received, it would say, "Oh, your data is associated with all these different companies, and then if you want to remove it, let us know." But then it's like, why would I let you scan my inbox and give you access to all this information? They say it's, they're not using it. Who knows? Like anything you're using for free, obviously you take it with a massive, block assault basically at that point. So it's really the wild, wild west out there of what you can and can't control. But yeah, no good solution anytime soon, especially not unless you get some kind of regulation to really rein in these bad guys.
Well,
And even then,
how that's going.
Enforcement doesn't work too well usually either, as it works out. So
let's talk about.
So it's hopeless.
Let's
so everybody just give up.
A company that seems to have, you could almost put a mark of delineation between Apple's 14.5 release and things going forward with the privacy. If you had to grade Apple, I know this is a tough one. If you had to grade Apple in terms of not their impact on where we are today with privacy, but do you think that they're doing all that they could be in terms of customer data privacy compared to kind of where they are currently? It feels to me that they have definitely increased or raised the level of understanding and provided a certain amount of control that wasn't there for consumers by giving them the opportunity are they at the default opt out, or are we still at default opt in with some of that stuff? I can't remember. But do you think Apple is doing as much as they could and should be doing in terms of giving more control over consumer data to the folks like us?
Yeah, I mean, it's I wouldn't say they're super honest in everything they do. There are some kind of conflicts of interest for them, but at a baseline, the biggest problem with apps, whether it's on an Android or an iPhone, is on your browser, you can easily have like an extension installed for like uBlock Origin or some way to kind of see what trackers are being loaded, and if you want to block ads and stuff like that. On apps, you have zero level of doing that. Even though each app is sandboxed in its own little environment, what people put into those apps is kind of like you never really want to see how the sausage is made there, because there are so many different packages and tools and SDKs that are baked into these apps that do all sorts of levels of tracking. Like I mentioned before, like anytime you see let's say a login with Facebook option in an app, that means like the Facebook app has been, or SDK has been embedded in that application, which means every activity you do is now tracked and can be sent back to Facebook through backend mechanisms. There's also things like Mixpanel and other analytics type software that do the same thing, where they give you an analytics, but then at the same time they're collecting all your information, and you just have no visibility into that as a user. I think what Apple did is like a decent first step, but again, I think it goes back to kind of the vendor should be a little bit more transparent in every component that kind of goes into that app. And it could get messy very quickly, as you can have a lot of different libraries and things like that. But the goal should be at least transparency, because when you load an app, there could be 50 things running in the background where your data is being sent to, and you have no idea. And maybe a couple of them are necessary and a couple of them you're okay with, but not all of them. The way that Apple does it right now is, ask app not to track, or it's okay, track me. And that's like a very like binary choice, which might not always be, what makes an app extremely functional. And so it's kind of the first step, but I think it's on the developer again to kind of earn that trust. I have it disabled from like an iOS settings level where like I never get the prompt at all. But otherwise, I don't know many people that would ever say or really do. I think the study is like something like 5 or 7% opt into ads because I don't know, those people are crazy. Like I don't know what in the world you would just be like, yeah, sure, like show me more ads that are relevant to me, I guess, whatever. But the biggest issue for Apple is kind of this. They've pushed into their own ad network for the App Store, and then they have like this curious way of justifying it because there's no reason to get it twisted. Like Apple does track you on their own apps, and so when you use Apple News, when you use Apple Stocks, when you use other Apple branded apps, they do track you and they will show you dynamic ads based on information. Their argument, Apple's argument, is basically that, those are first party trackings that are okay because they're all coming from the same vendor. So for example, like Facebook and Instagram, both by the same vendor, would be able to track you in their own apps and show you ads accordingly, which seems like it's kind of fair because that's a first party data connection. The problem happens when third party, because what Facebook wants to do is basically when you open up your Reddit application, they want to be able to show you ads in Facebook based on the data you looked at in your Reddit app, for example. And so different ways like that. So it's that cross app tracking that is what's being kind of disallowed here. I think it's a great move. Ultimately, people will complain and say like, all these advertising efforts are going down and it's ruining businesses and stuff like that. Your business is built on a shady way of capturing customer data and hyper targeting, then you're kind of just a marketing company that happens to be selling stuff. Otherwise, you're not a very successful business at all. So, and that way, I don't really feel too bad. I think there was a big hit to a lot of these direct-to-consumer companies, like whether it was mattresses or razor blades or whatever these kinds of whole wave that happened in the past couple of years. A lot of them took really big hits because they weren't able to market as aggressively as they could before. And that just shows how much value that data actually had and how a small little change like letting people opt into being tracked would affect business models of so many companies and affect so many millions of dollars. And unfortunately, I'm sure people got laid off for it. But in my opinion, they kind of got hired for the wrong reasons too. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit kind of rash in that, but that's just my overall views on the whole iOS tracking thing.
So that leads to two questions. First one, pretty straightforward. So back in 2018, I was actually speaking at Zoholics, and at one point I asked the audience, how many of you default to opt out? And I'd say about 40% of the audience raised their hand, maybe more. And my immediate response was, I hate you. That's what I told them. I said, I hate you. I said, well, I didn't really hate them, of course, but I thought I would get a rise out if I said it. So, but basically, the implication is obvious there, which is, you're basically saying the customers don't control what their own activity with you. Now they make, there's a lot, both sides have what they feel are rational arguments for that. How do you deal with that one? And that's question one. And question two is specific to TikTok, which I'll get to after.
All right. So on the first one, I kind of just default back to transparency as the simplest answer because people don't mind getting tracked, especially if you're getting value for it. It's okay. People use Facebook all the time. Facebook's been free. There's no one that can argue, especially maybe not as of late, but early days of Facebook, maybe it was a tremendously valuable product. And in exchange to use that product for free, there might have been some data collection and some ads. And I understand. Same thing with Gmail and Google services. Offer a good value for free. Right. There's an exchange of data.
That's fine.
The problem really happens where nobody knows that, or a lot of people don't know, I'd say, anytime you go to a website that has a Facebook like button on there, that website was tracking you and sending that data back to Facebook. That's like a shady practice. And so that first party relationship data I put into this app, it makes sense that you can use this for whatever it is. But once you start going about that method of tracking people across the web and you use the cookies and third party cookies and all this kind of stuff, that's just like you as a vendor know, there's basically like 6 MBAs in a room and they're all walking around or talking to each other of how can I make more money and how can I squeeze like the last ounce out of every single one of these customers. And that's kind of where the problem is. You kind of have to leave a little bit of money on the table in order to gain long-term trust from your customers. That's kind of the way I see it. But like you said, I totally understand that there's two sides to the story, and other people in more marketing space will be like, no, that's nonsense. The data is available. I should be able to use it. No one's saying you can't use the data that's available. But if you want to track people continuously, I don't know, like maybe you should ask them if they're okay being tracked. Otherwise, like that's just a very basic thing. Just ask them.
Me, hardcore opt-in is the default no matter what. I mean, I can go into a long discussion about when Facebook didn't do that and why they ended up getting sued for that and things like that. But let's get to the more relevant question on TikTok. Okay. So here's the interesting thing about TikTok. TikTok, obviously, most talked about and probably the most used platform right now. It's actually had a fairly decent amount of cross-generational, interest. And interesting enough, in 2021, they did their Global World Congress where they announced tons of marketing tools for third parties to come in and start marketing and doing ads. And, and they were pretty advanced tools, actually. They were pretty surprisingly advanced given TikTok. Now, the interesting question here is, though, you also work toward the sophistication of, if you understand the sophistication of TikTok's algorithm, which is extraordinary, it's not good, it's extraordinary. And for those who haven't heard this on the show before, go to Eugene Way, EUGENE.com, and read his 3 blog posts and read them in order on the TikTok algorithm. There's also go and watch a previous episode of the Playaz where we had him on. Eugene Way is brilliant, and he really the best understanding of the algorithm. All right, so here's the interesting question: marketers, advertisers start using these tools, right? They are, but the algorithm is effectively taking the use of those tools, looking at what's produced, looking at it against the profiles of all the people and the activity and what they're doing, and matching accordingly, right? So you basically have third parties effectively using third-party data without anyone's permission, particularly. But then again, the algorithm basically says, hi, you're never going to have anyone's permission anyway, the way I'm working. They're scrolling and they're happy, so everyone's happy. But there comes that point where the organic power of TikTok gets dissipated by the overt amount of marketing and advertising. But the question is, you actually, in effect, if you're looking at for them, third parties are getting the free use of active third-party data, right? I mean, first-party data, active, and they're getting a free look at it, right? How do you even think about that? Because it's also fully dynamic, and it's not. You're not getting. Here's a big batch of data that you just bought from us. It's not that kind of passive demographic stuff. It's the active data that that CDPs lust for, right? Yeah. So, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think TikTok has been like blowing it out of the water. Like I saw the notes from the conference you were talking about, and like their ad tools and ad platform basically blew Facebook and Google out of the water. Like in terms of capability and offers, like a lot of articles were coming out saying that it was already kind of pushing to be there, but their ad tools were lacking, especially monetization and attribution across channels, and they basically nailed that down. And now it's kind of big time for them. I mean, my problem with TikTok, I'd say, is a little bit more at a beyond the tracking. I just think the app itself is kind of like more or less cancer on society, and people shouldn't be like doom scrolling for 2 hours. But that's just me. But
how about an hour?
Or I mean, any amount of time. It's just like not generally healthy, I think. But and then you can get into the whole like China thing as well on it. But yeah, broadly on speaking, people are on it, and I think that demographic generally. See, I think Facebook people know, track, and share ads. TikTok, I'm not really sure people really get that same vibe. Like people, it's still kind of like the early days of Facebook, where if you knew that they were making money, then you kind of knew. But most of the people just thought, oh, this is this great thing that's just for free, and I can use it for fun, and everything's hunky dory. But so I think TikTok luckily has that maybe better. They have like a bad PR problem for like the China angle, but they don't really have the bad PR angle for the data privacy violations angle. So I guess kudos to their like either marketing or PR departments, but they haven't really just been exposed that well there. But I think that's going to come soon, because if they can't get rid of it or attack it for other reasons, they'll come back and find all the different violations that they're doing here locally. Even just recently, there was that article. I think there was something like 60 or 70 or 80 TikTok managers, executives that were like caught on leaked audio from meetings that were basically saying, "Oh yeah, like everything back in China can be or everything in the States can be accessed back by the mothership back in China too." So that article lasted for like a day, and then people forgot. And I would say that's kind of like a big deal, but nobody really seemed to care. And like the workarounds and this Oracle partnership they got, they're all kind of just bad band-aids for a more serious issue, because you can't really trust it overall. So I don't know if that really answers your question or not, but yeah, TikTok is up there with like I would say like apps of shame, up there with like Clearview in terms of like how bad they are and like just how not necessary that product needs to be.
I guess the last comment is, just before we wrap it, is YouTube's the exact opposite. They are fully transparent on what's being done. To their credit, really. I mean, you can't avoid them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Skip ad.
Well,
right?
Get a premium subscription, which I
Right.
have. But as we said on Watching Privacy, just because you get a premium and you don't see ads, that doesn't mean they're still collecting your data, folks.
Oh, they're collecting your data. They're making a fortune off the fact that you're paying for not seeing ads.
Yeah, they're getting you one way or the other.
Right.
When they're just showing you the ads in search instead of YouTube. Yeah.
But again, YouTube doesn't hide anything. They really don't. I mean, to their credit, they are. And again, I don't like giving them tons of credit, but they're fully transparent about what they do with advertising and with mostly what they do with data collection, not entirely.
And how they're paying their folks.
And some people are making some serious money doing it.
Yeah.
It's a career now, actually. So,
well,
you guys were a little bit late to that train, or you guys could have been YouTubers.
Oh, don't worry, it's not over yet. Not over yet.
Oh boy! All right, this has been really great.
Yes,
it was a full
fantastic
crossover. It was literally a mashup of Playaz and privacy, which is exactly what I had envisioned.
That's the name of a club.
Yeah, that's like a new
Playaz and privacy.
That's
a club.
All right, Tejas, thank you for making time to do this.
It was great.
And anything we should be saying about Watching Privacy at this point?
Keep watching privacy. I mean, I guess I'm always the worst at it, but there is like YouTube and Twitter and stuff you can subscribe to. You can search for it or whatever. But I don't even care if people do that. It's really just kind of, people should ask themselves questions if, you want to be tracked without your, express consent. That's the basics of it. It's not about living under a rock and never going out in sunlight, but just all you're asking for is the companies you do business with, ask and see and dig and figure out if they are doing things by the book and if you're getting exploited, because basically that's what's happening. You think you're using a service and you have an exchange, but there's a whole, other side of the market that's happening with a lot of companies that are either selling your data or selling ads or monetizing you in a different way than you kind of think you are. So just awareness is all I could really ask for.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you to put that up.
Oof, yeah.
That is really it.
Thanks, Dean.
Yep, we'll definitely be looking at that one.
Yep.
We should try to do something like a live version at Zoho Day. We'll get Sandy.
I'll get you a good spot at
wait a minute. A live version of what?
Just
I don't know.
Something.
Yes. It could be like Watching Playaz or CRM Privacy. I don't know.
Playaz and privacy.
Playaz and privacy. There it is.
Playaz and privacy. It's a club.
All right.
Yeah, we'll get a little sign made. Everybody will have their cowboy hats. It'll be a good old time out here.
No cowboy hats.
We'll get you a bandana or a bolo tie.
No bandana.
Something.
No bandana, no cowboy hats, no big belt buckles.
Wow.
All of which I'm sure will be there. But
all right, one last quick question.
We'll get you some chaps then.
All right.
Since we don't have to worry about he's not a Patriots fan, so we don't have to go down there. Although he is a Cowboys fan.
There he is drinking that scotch.
So Arch Manning, Does this mean that there's a national championship coming to your alma mater because of Arch Manning?
And the
Yes or no?
9 people who have followed him.
I mean, I think it's a good time to be a Texas fan. The best I think we've had in like 10 years. So whatever, we're happy. But I think everybody knows that you have to kind of keep your expectations as low as humanly possible, and just kind of hope that they get exceeded. Same with Cowboys fans and same with Texas Longhorns fans. So I think it's a pretty big deal. Honestly, I'm a little suspect on how good the kid is, but I think the fact that the family kind of backed it makes it seem like that, like, those guys would vet a lot of coaches and have a lot of inside knowledge on a lot of things. They wouldn't let him make a bad decision. So it's almost like, regardless of his skill level, the fact that like the whole family was behind him and then they vouched for, this is the move. The Archie Manning story is just kind of the short version of it, but like the 2 or 3 days that have followed have been like a recruiting role for Texas, like 3 or 4 5-stars, and like all sorts of players are coming in because of that announcement. And so it's kind of just getting the ball rolling. But again, knowing us, we'll probably win some game we're not supposed to win, and we'll end up losing to some terrible team, just kind of like we always do. So I don't know.
Well,
low expectations, high hopes.
Let me answer my own question, because the one thing that you didn't factor into this equation is your boys are coming to the SEC. Sorry, you're going to be looking up to a whole bunch of teams, buddy. Sorry. Oklahoma and Texas, get used to being kind of down there.
We're playing Bama here in Austin in September or something like that. Ooh. Come down. We'll do a live show for that. Or you're not a Bama fan. But the last time I went to an SEC game actually was just beat Georgia in New Orleans at the Sugar Bowl. That was a great experience.
Moving on. All right. So, all right, man. It's been great having you. So,
bring back Darryl Royal.
Oh my gosh, Darryl Royal. Oh my goodness. We're going way back on that.
My era.
All right. So on behalf of Tejas Gadhia, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players, and we can't say goodbye.
There she is. Minnie.
Now we can say bye.